What was the most absurd, strict rule you had to live by growing up? My parents were horrible parents in general, but the most bizarre rule that my siblings and I put up with was that we weren't allowed to sneeze multiple times in a row. One sneeze? Fine. Another sneeze after some arbitrary number of minutes later? No problem. 2 sneezes in a row? Get yelled at for being unhygienic, even if you covered your mouth and nose properly, and for having no manners. God forbid if you sneezed thrice or more in a row. I have seasonal allergies, and one time my dad was in a particularly bad mood and caught me in a sneezing fit and grounded me for a week. I find it almost impossible to sneeze just once. After I open those floodgates, there's usually another 1 or 2 in the chamber ready to pop. I was grounded from the time I was 8 until I moved out. My stepmom would always find another reason to extend it, no matter how small. Even just my bookcase being messy, and at some point it just became normal that I wasn't allowed to do anything, and my dad didn't bother to fight it. And grounding for me didn't just mean I couldn't play video games. It was everything. I had no access to any kind of tech. She took away my alarm clock when she found out I was using the radio on it, and I couldn't go outside. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't be up past 8. Yes, even in summer when I was 17. I couldn't leave my room without a good reason, and I wasn't allowed to be in my sister's room or talk to her at all. I lost my real mum at 5, and my stepmom came into the picture within the year. I was still nowhere near recovering and felt like she was trying to replace my mum, so of course I wouldn't call her mum or anything like that. She and my father married when I was 7 without asking me or my sister. 3 at the time. My little sister was only 1 when my mum died and didn't feel bad letting our stepmom be mum. She didn't know anything else. She loved my sister and hated me, and I started doing worse and worse in school, giving my stepmom reason enough in my dad's eyes to keep me grounded that whole school year. It just never stopped after that. When I was still quite young, she found a cover to an adult movie DVD I'd found in the trash, and gave me a whack with her belt. My grandparents, mum's side, got pictures of the bruises, but were too afraid that my dad would move me across the country to do anything. It was enough that she was never physical again, but she just started making me write sentences after that. It started out, "I will not lie" 100 times, but that didn't keep me busy long enough, so she kept adding to it every time I did something she didn't like. The worst was when I was 14 and I ate some stevia packets from the top of the fridge and told her I didn't know where the empty packets came from out of fear. I will not lie, I will not steal, God hates a thief, and sin is death. 10,000 times. Due by the end of the month. In December. While I was writing them out, she came by my door, didn't say a word, and just set her belt on the doorknob. That was about as bad as it got, and honestly, I consider myself lucky it never got worse. I went to my grandparents' house every weekend, and they tried to spoil me as best they could. They weren't rich, but they loved me and gave me everything they could. I wouldn't be anywhere near the kind of person I am today without them, and so I'm thankful that they were part of my life. They taught me how a family is supposed to show love, since my mum couldn't, my stepmom wouldn't, and my dad didn't know how. Damn, that stepmother is practically following some step-by-step walkthrough on how to traumatize someone throughout their upbringing, and that was downright neglectful of your dad. Hope you did okay later in life. My mother would come home from work occasionally and say, "I know you did something you weren't supposed to. Go to your room. You have 15 minutes to think about what you want to say. If you lie, you'll get double punishment." I would freak out and say anything I thought might be bad I did during the day. I watched TV and I wasn't supposed to. I forgot my textbook at school. I made fun of a girl at school. I climbed a tree, among other things. She'd ground me for a week and I would feel relieved it wasn't worse. The messed up thing is that she had no idea what bad thing I did. She just knew I would confess to anything and everything. Being raised religious, I always thought I was sinning. So this was a way for her to control me and ground me so she was comfortable with where I was when she had night shifts. My mom once kicked me out of the house for being gay, and I'm not even gay. My mom wanted me to be gay. Once a friend and I got wet in the rain on the way home, and she asked if we were going to use the shower. Both. At the same time. She brought towels for both of us. She was extremely disappointed when I told her I got a girlfriend. If I tooted, I was forced to spend 2 hours outside, even in the freezing winter. One day, I collapsed in the cold and was taken away from my mum after I was hospitalized for 3 hours after collapsing. I then lived with my grandparents for the rest of my childhood, and legally wasn't allowed to see my mum until I was 18. I guess it counted as child endangerment. Something less serious, my mum was paranoid that everyone and everything was a kidnapper. She hated the mailman on our route, so when I was young, 3 or 4 years old, my mum told me it was illegal to be outside when the mail came. About 11:15 every day, I'd see that truck coming. I'd hightail it inside the house, terrified that I'd be spotted. Fast forward 30 years, I genuinely still feel a tinge of panic in the smallest recesses of the back of my brain when I see the mailman arrive. Only now it's overpowered by the excitement of my latest Amazon package that I don't really need. My time to shine. No nail polish, no tights under dresses, no drinking tea, not allowed to watch anything with any cursing. Had to call my parents sir and ma'am, and now they're upset that I call them this instead of mum and dad, by the way, but it's what they asked me to do. Bedtime of 9:30 until I was 18. Parents took my phone at 9 p.m. every night when I was in high school and read through all of my texts. They were allowed to open my bank statements. Not a rule, but my parents would read my diary and go through my computer, and once left video cameras up while I was hanging out with a friend and talking. They loved to repeat things I'd said or written to me, just to let me know that I had no privacy. In elementary school, my parents sat me down and said, "We just want you to know, if you get pregnant while living with us, we will kick you out." My parents gave my dog away while I was at school one day without telling me. I was 9. And these days, they wonder why I never want to share anything with them. Geez, this is all rubbish. My mom would read my diary too, but she never told me. She'd read it and then try to trick me into lying about something I wrote so she could punish me. I didn't know she was doing this for years. She convinced me that God told her what I'd done and led her to test me. My dad didn't snoop into my things that I know of, but he loved to accuse me of wanting to do the deed with my brother's friends, while he himself tried to get with my classmate. She was 15, he was in his 50s. Aren't parents the best? The only thing I can't figure out is your no tea rule. Why? Did they think it was poisonous? Or anti-American? If you're American, that is. Oh, and why no tights? I wasn't allowed to wear dresses without tights, lest someone see the bare flesh of my thighs. Huh? I wasn't allowed to swim in public swimming schools because I'd catch transmissible diseases from them, apparently. When my PE class would go to the pool 1 week a year, I had to walk laps around the pool because I couldn't participate. My stepdad typed up and printed a 5-page list of rules. He made me print, sign, and date the last page. I was to be held accountable, and if any rules were broken, I had to move out. I wasn't a bad kid. The whole thing was to establish his dominance of me. I wasn't allowed to leave my room. I couldn't go to the bathroom or kitchen, but I better have a reason to be there. So the narrator came to this story grouping mostly hoping for goofy rules about weirdos who are legally obligated to pledge fealty to the family cat every morning or something. Instead, we have the usual stories of conservative Christian repression and just downright imprisoning their kids. Sad stuff. Holding out for something goofier. I couldn't shave my legs until I was 16. I did when I was 12. My mum found out and grounded me. I had to ask to get a drink of anything or eat anything. I couldn't go anywhere unless my little brother could go with me too, or if he had a play date. If he didn't have anyone to play with, then I couldn't either. We were 8 years apart, by the way. Nobody in my house was allowed to get the mail except my dad. Doesn't matter what time he got home, leave the mail in the mailbox. He'd also personally open all the mail no matter the recipient. He'd always know if anyone touched it. To clarify, we aren't in piles of debt, I'm not Harry Potter, and I think he just likes control. My parents were super laid back, but my mother's stepdad Larry could be a huge butthole. She told me that one morning, as a kid, she was given a chocolate-covered donut, and, as a kid will do, decided to start nibbling off the chocolate. Larry decided this annoyed the crap out of him and asked her promptly to stop eating the donut like that. "Oh, just let her eat the donut how she wants," said Mum's mum, washing dishes. My mum continues to eat chocolate around the edges, and Larry shoots up, shouting, "Knock that off!" and fricking pitches his morning cup of coffee across the kitchen, where it explodes on the wall next to Mum's mum. I'm thankful that Larry was not in my mother's life for long. If you're out there, Larry, F you. As a kid, I loved to drink the milk out of the bowl after eating the cereal. One day I stayed over at a friend's house for a sleepover. In the morning I had some cereal and proceeded to drink directly from the bowl as I always had. I was told off and I thought, fine, drinking like that is a little rude, I'll just drink it by using the spoon, like you drink soup. I was told off for that too. I was like, what should I do with this milk? We don't like to waste food at my house, so it gets eaten or in the fridge, and the idea of just pouring it down the sink baffled me. I once got grounded for 2 months because my school bus was late. Backstory. I was 12 years old when this happened. A couple of kids almost got into a fistfight before the school bus left the parking lot, and the bus driver had to get the principal to break it up and escort them back into the school. The bus driver lectured us about fighting before driving us home. This caused us to be 30 minutes late. When I explained this to my mother, she blamed the whole situation on me, which was completely irrational because 1, I barely knew the kids who were involved, and 2, I was an introvert, bookworm type who never got into a fight. Oh, and 3, if I'd been in the fight, I would have been taken to the principal's office for punishment instead of being allowed to ride the bus home. She made a rule that I would be grounded every time the bus was late going forward regardless of the reasoning. I grew up in the northwest part of the US, so even when the bus driver had to drive home slowly because of snow, I would still get punished. Needless to say, I wasn't allowed out of the house much in middle school or high school. I once got grounded because I did the dishes without having to be reminded. My mum said that I was trying to manipulate her and that I must have only done it because I was trying to get something out of her. In reality, all I wanted out of her was to stop yelling at me about how I never do the dishes without having to be reminded. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. If you didn't instantly say what you wanted to eat, my father would cook onions and garlic. He didn't like people wasting his time. My grandmother made me write out the encyclopedia entry on witchcraft when she found out I'd read the first 4 Harry Potter books, if that counts. Oh no, my kid might learn witchcraft. Better have them copy an article on actual witchcraft. I had a stepdad who was a police officer, and all this occurred until I was 15. 1, I had to eat beans first on my plate and then clockwise. If I didn't follow this rule, I'd get no food and kicked from the dinner table. 2, I couldn't listen to Vanilla Ice because it was black music. 3, I had to stand in the corner with both feet on the floor and back straight for hours. 4, I had a time limit on hugging my mother. If we hugged too long, he called me gay slurs. 5, I had to get up in the morning and sit on the toilet and shine his leather while he showered. 6, I couldn't shut the door to go number 2. 7, I couldn't shut the door to shower or bathe. 8, if my bed squeaked at night, I'd get whipped because he thought I was whacking it. Oh yeah, and there were more. I'm a mid-30s straight male and in a professional career. This happened from '84 to 1997 in southern US. This is just the surface stuff. I didn't even mention the stuff I knew was off growing up. He's retired on police pension, living off the state. He never had a single charge formally put in his jacket or his criminal record. Mum was definitely having a rough time of it too. No one in the house was allowed to shave or have a razor at all. I couldn't go to a barber or shave at a friend's house, but had my PC taken away when I tried at home. I still don't understand my mother's logic behind this one. I wasn't allowed to shave my legs. I guess my mom's thinking was that all the hair would serve as boy repellent. It wasn't necessary though, my personality was more than enough to keep me from getting laid. As much as some of the other stuff has surprised me, the repeated rule of no leg shaving across some of these posts is something I didn't even contemplate could happen. Fundamentalist religious people, treat your kids better. Your daughters shouldn't be your prisoners. My dad wrote contracts for me, including clauses like daily wake-up times, bedtimes, times to eat and what I ate, chores, homework, studying, and sports schedules, and strict rules and regulations regarding how I spent my free time, such as 30 minutes of computer use or video games, 1 hour of television, 1 sleepover per month, etc. If I didn't follow my schedule to the dot, missed sports practice or a game, failed to do a chore, or failed to get a 4.0 on every report card, I would be super grounded, as my friends referred to it. Basically, I had to read quietly in my room. I wasn't even allowed outside. I had to sign these contracts and commit to them, or I'd be sent to military school, which is where I spent every summer after 7th grade, taking classes anyways. As a result of these classes, I was a couple of grades ahead with math, English, and science, and was still expected to make perfect marks every semester. I was grounded virtually all the time, but luckily my parents had joint custody, and I escaped to my mother's house as much as possible. Also, mandatory substance testing from age 14 onward. Don't even get me started on what he would have done if he knew how much I smoked. I fought for sole custody to belong to my mother when he finally decided that, having caught me in the act with my girlfriend at the time, he was going to send me to a military academy 4 hours away. Nope, haven't spoken to him in almost 6 years. My dad was raised with the idea that kids essentially have no opinion, which he passed on to my sister and I. If we were doing anything and he or my mum needed us to do something else, we were expected to immediately drop it and go do the other thing, which doesn't sound that bad until I'd be in the middle of painting or something else messy and be called to do the dishes. Then in the middle of the dishes be called to clean up the original mess, then to go clean that up and be yelled at for not finishing the dishes. And Lord help me if I said just a minute or anything like that. This sounds like a manager I had. Do tasks A, B, and C. I'll start task A. Why isn't C done yet? Drop A and start C. Why haven't you finished A yet? Go back to A. Wait, what about C? And why haven't you finished B yet? Stupid. Leave me alone and my job would take half the time. They were also fond of, well, why didn't you do X? When I'd tell her the extra tasks I did in downtime. Oh, you vacuumed, dusted, and washed the cabinets? Why didn't you clean the windows? My mom used to not allow me to watch any movies that had magic in them. Jumanji was considered demonic. I didn't even see The Little Mermaid until I was 16. I didn't watch The Princess and the Frog until I'd moved out. I was also banned from reading or watching Harry Potter. I managed to sneak that in at the age of 20. Mom never caught me and Dad didn't care. My dad wouldn't let me go out at all. The only time he'd let me leave the house was to walk to school, and even then, he had to walk me to the entrance. I was teased all the time. Due to my isolated upbringing, I'm very socially awkward, and he wonders why I won't go out and find myself a partner. He never raised my sisters that way, just me. He also wouldn't let me chew gum. He'd flip out. He's physically pried my mouth open to take the gum out. He's such a bizarre, controlling man. My mom didn't allow candy. Once I snagged a box of Valentine Hearts candy from preschool. Yes, I was about 4 or 5 and smuggled them home. Out of the goodness of my heart, I decided to share them with my undeservedly revered older brother. Said brother quickly decided that getting free candy was nowhere near as entertaining as me being punished and humiliated, and told my mom I was eating contraband candy. So, like any reasonable adult would do, she freaked out and pulled a Valentine heart out of my mouth while I was trying to eat it. Moral of the story? Never trust anyone. Could never have my door shut because, as a kid, I don't pay any bills, so I'm not running anything around here. My mum and I didn't get along and she did this count to 3 thing. I used to get in trouble for stuff I didn't do, so I got sent to my room a lot. I'd then refuse to go there, so she came up with this rule where she would add an extra hour every time I talked back after she got to 3. I ended up spending 8 hours in my room once because my sister lied about me doing something. My mum tried something similar with me. She told me I'd be grounded 1 day for every minute late I was home after curfew. It worked a couple of times when I was only a little late. One night I checked the time and was already 20 minutes late, so I just came home at 4:30 a.m. She didn't ground me for 270 days, thankfully. We came to a new, more reasonable agreement that morning. We had to drink a glass of lemon juice right before bed. Pure, freshly squeezed lemon juice. A whole glass. Timer went on for 10 minutes. If it went off and you weren't finished, whack on the butt. Set timer and repeat until the lemon juice was gone. I did okay, maybe 1 whack on the butt. But my sister has a terrible gag reflex, so she really got it bad. As you can imagine, being 5 and going to bed like that makes for some nasty heartburn and nausea. As a medical professional, do you get acid reflux nowadays? How about your siblings? Your parents might have caused GERD, which could lead to throat cancer. This is some pretty serious stuff. Go get your esophagus checked out. Unless your parents are waging some very poorly informed war on scurvy, I can't for the life of me find a reason why this rule would be a thing unless you just like watching your kids suffer, to be honest. After I turned 9 years old, I wasn't allowed to watch cartoons anymore because that's not what men did. I hated my dad for it. He was your typical dad that forces society's standard masculinity down my throat. I definitely rebelled and still watched cartoons. I'm 24 and still enjoy a good cartoon or anime. I was raised religious and my mum invented a concept called micro-sinning. So we had a rule where I had to be home by 11. If I made it home at 10:50, I was punished because it was too close to 11 and I was being defiant. Jesus died for our micro-sins. My parents were all over the place with strictness. When I was old enough to drive, my younger sister and I would drive to McDonald's, just a few miles away. My parents would admonish us, "Whatever you do, do not eat French fries in the car." Invariably, we'd get home, they would run out, open the doors, sniff, and start screaming at us for eating French fries in the car. We never did. When Nintendo, the original, first came out, my cousin got one for Christmas. We were poor, so he brought it over so we could try it out. Nope, The new rule became no video games hooked up to the TV because it would ruin the TV. FYI, they still believe this to be true and still only have one TV. Couldn't watch Disney movies as a child because they showed kissing before marriage. Wasn't allowed to go to friends' houses or let them give me a ride home from school because I'd be imposing on their parents. Mum went through my trash to make sure I didn't throw out anything important. The rule was that my mum had to pick out my friends because she didn't want me hanging out with anyone who wasn't Catholic or who was into satanic content. To my mum, everything was satanic. So basically, just about everyone I brought home was influenced by the devil because their parents let them listen to modern pop music and watch Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. Mid to late 90s. Visiting their homes was strictly forbidden on account of the fact that the only opinions she wanted me to have were hers and hers only. It also didn't help when I wanted to play at the park with my friends and my mum would literally follow us and watch us the entire time. Eventually, no one wanted to be my friend anymore, and that was when the bullying began. This torture went on for 7 years. Then my mum wondered why I didn't have any friends and was bullied for such a long time. It was a miracle that I even had friends when high school came along. Needless to say, I'm not a Catholic anymore, and my mum and I are not on good terms. There was a crap ton of crazy rules living with my parents, mainly from my mum. My dad only followed to avoid arguments. But this rule was the one that affected me the most. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.